Hi, welcome to the Penguin Post newspaper by kids. Today we are interviewing Professor Andrew Malmer. He studies how we can restore forests while helping local communities thrive. Let's ask him some questions.
Could you please tell us more about your work?
Okay, I am a professor, as Emily said, about tropical forest ecology and management. For more than 30 years, I have been a university teacher in forestry and forest ecology, and as well as doing research. And I do research in tropical countries about benefits of trees and forest ecosystem for ecosystem services like carbon storage, water management, and better livelihoods for poor people. However, in the last 2 years, I work mainly for the Swedish government with international cooperation and support to forest policy and development. For example, support to forest restoration in low-income countries.
Where can we learn about what types of trees are good to plant in different climate zones?
Yeah, that is a good question. And of course, there is lots of research and technical literature and books and papers about this. But there is probably no single good source where you can have a complete answer, because there are, of course, so many different environments, and also maybe there are different purposes to plant trees. However, I looked in the internet and I found a very good example called American Heritage Trees. That site has maps with different suitability zones for different kinds of trees, as well as they also have a good description of the most common trees in the North American continent. These kinds of zones are called hardiness zones, and they are available for many countries and for different kinds of plants and so on. So that could be a good source to look for such information.
How did you get interested in studying about forests?
That's a good question. My father was a biology teacher. That helped, I guess. But I think more importantly, uh, I think that uh, it was because I had opportunity as a kid to be in the forest, and also when I was young. And I have always lived close to forests, so it was easy. And of course, also that I could, and I was allowed by my parents to be in the forest, to play and do interesting things like building huts, making dams in small streams, and collecting things like rocks and cones and feathers. And doing that, maybe you do that too successively. There was always more to learn. And I have not learned enough. There are still things to learn when I'm in the forest. So
What is your favorite story or moment from when you were in a forest?
well, every day in the forest can be an interesting moment. It's always different. There are different seasons, different weather, time of the day, and so on. But of course, sometimes if you spend much time in the forest, sooner or later there are special, unusual moments. Maybe I should tell you about one uh, strong moment. I was still in your age, and I was walking in the forest with my parents. We were out to pick berries on a warm summer day in the forest. And then we came to a small forest lake. And in the lake, there were three moose bathing, moose, the big deer. Um, and it was really warm. So they were cooling themselves, but also probably getting rid of mosquitoes in the warm day. They didn't see us first, but when they did see us, they slowly moved up from the lake and they shook the water out of their fur like big wet dogs, and then they slowly walked away. That was very exciting, and still 50 years later, I can see that in my head, I can see it like a film again. So I mean, those kinds of moments are precious.
We watched a TED talk about planting forests in our backyard. How do you think we can do that in an area like California that has water shortage and almost is a desert?
Mm. The critical point is probably when you plant the tree and when the tree is young. When it grows up, it grows deep roots and it will be quite clever in finding water deeper down in the soil. Um, in West Africa, where I have been working in very dry areas close to the Sahara Desert, there is a technique called SAI, how to plant safely in dry areas. And there are three important things in that. The first one is to stop water from running away on the surface when it finally rains. So then you can plant the tree in a small shallow pit, or if it is in a slope, you can maybe build a small wall of soil around so that the water stops by the tree. Uh, Secondly, when you should plant, dig up a lot of the soil where the plant should be and mix the soil with manure. You know what manure is? It's poo from the animals, like if you have goats or sheep or chicken or horses or cows. And then you mix with the soil, and then you put this back into the hole and plant the tree in this mix, because this mix will contain lots of nutrients, which is good for the tree, but also it will store water better for the tree, again when it rains, instead of the water going down so where the tree cannot reach it. And thirdly, you must protect your young tree. Um, Sometimes if you have rats or rabbits or maybe deer that comes into your backyard, you can consider protecting your tree maybe with some chicken net or something, so that they don't chew on the tree and eat it, which is also sensitive for the small tree. When they grow up, it doesn't matter so much.
How do you think people can live in harmony with nature and animals? People need space to grow their vegetables and crops, and so they cut down the forest. How can we balance this?
That is a tricky question and a very important question, how we can deal with that in the future. Um, I work a lot in Africa and Asia, and um, and in those many of the poor countries there, it's much of the farming and animals for food that drives deforestation, because poor farmers are often not able to do sustainable and intensive agriculture, but instead they need to cut down more forests to have fresh soil to cultivate. In those situations, it doesn't work just to conserve the forest. And as you say, we need more land. Um, so instead, what we work with typically to restore forests and bring back forests, often in degraded areas, the new forests need to help those poor people living in there by giving them opportunities to harvest things from the forest, like honey or mushrooms or herbs, or even using the timber and plant the forest sustainably again. Because then the forest will have a value for them and they will keep it. So that is one example. And in other areas, it's also a question of maybe including more trees in agriculture to have the benefits of what tree does. A very, very short answer on a big question.
What is your favorite reforestation project and where is it located?
Uh, there are many examples of interesting cases here. But I like especially the development in a country called Niger. It's again in Western Africa, just south of the Sahara Desert. It's pretty dry. Like in many countries, the government own all the land, but the farmers and the people there, they typically live from small farming of grains, and they have cows and goats. And that is a long tradition, and it's okay for the government. But for a long time, typically, it has not been allowed to cut the trees. The trees are the government's property. But the farmers, of course, they need wood for making their houses, for firewood to cook their food, and so on, or for fencing for their animals. So slowly, they have to take this wood anyway. So it's illegal cutting of, and the forest disappear. It's not there anymore. Slowly, even if there is a law and the police cannot check it. But then there was a change in this country, and there was a new law saying that it was okay for the people, for the farmers to use wood. And then suddenly the country turned green because when when it was okay for them to harvest wood, they were also keen that the trees would come back, and then they started to plant trees as well. So from instead of deforestation, that there was lots of new green trees. And this is a very nice example, I think, of that if local people are allowed, and if the trees and the forest have a value for them, it's important that the forest is there, and it's not only a land where you can grow more food, then it will remain. And that's one very important aspect and a nice example.
If you were to make an app to help with,
Reforestation.
with, with
If you were to make an app to help reforestation, what would you want to have in that app?
Okay, yeah. So that would be an app to help people to plant trees. Uh, Maybe the first thing should be a little bit about why bothering to plant the tree, how to motivate, why should you plant the tree? Then it could contain something about what to plant, what is suitable where you are, and for the purposes you want to plant for. Do you want wood, or do you want nice flowers or fruits or just shade? Um, then maybe where to find the seeds or the seedlings to plant, and how to do it, like before this um, a method to plant trees and so on. So those are maybe some examples of what such an app would contain.
I'm working on making a tree planting game slash app. The main idea here is to motivate people to plant trees. The app user can share a video of themselves planting seeds of trees in their part of the world, so others can be inspired to do the same. Do you have any suggestions of what I could add to my game?
Okay, to if it is the game, uh, of course it must be interesting, maybe even exciting, right? Uh, and And by being exciting and funny and interesting, you can motivate people to plant trees. The first thing I think you need to think about is, what is your target group? Who would do the game? Is it small kids or older kids like yourselves, or even grown-ups? Um, and then you can use your imagination to have a good story, right? An interesting game contains something which is a bit exciting. Maybe it could be about how you plant trees and how you try to achieve to restore a forest, and how you succeed or how you manage to do that will depend on animals eating, like insects or rabbits that attack. How can you protect them? And maybe how can you use the things that comes from the tree, the nuts or the fruits or things like this. And then maybe you build on points or something. Then for small kids, there could be cute, nice animals, and it can be slow. But for for older people like you and me, maybe it need to be more exciting and fast and so on. Um, but I'm not the one who makes apps or even less games. So I wish you good luck. But
Thank you so much for joining. We loved talking with you. Bye.
okay,
Bye.
thanks. Bye.